What is going on, guys? Scott here from Horizon Bound. Hope you guys are doing well. I'm doing pretty good. A little tired, but nothing a little Black Rifle 300 espresso triple shot can't handle. I'm just kidding. This isn't sponsored by Black Rifle or anything. I'm just messing around. So today I'm doing another install, and this one I'm super stoked about. I'm gonna be installing not one, not two, not three, not four, not five, but six LP6s from Baja Design. It's gonna be about 51,000 lumens worth of light. Now I'm sure a lot of you guys are gonna be commenting in the comment section, Scott, why do you need over 51,000 lumens worth of light? And my answer to you is, because this is America and I can. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, that is a great reason. This is America and I can. But no, the real reason is because I do a lot of night driving and I need the light. I'm usually getting off of work around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm not hitting the trails until 9, 10 o'clock at night. As great as the ditch lights are for adding that extra spill, you know, helps me see the trail markers, you know, so I'm not missing anything. It's not bright enough, and I want some light. So that's why I opted to get 6 of these Baja Design LP6s. This is the driving combo, and you can tell because of the two lights right here that have the lined pattern. Essentially that's to kind of make it spread out and reflect a little bit, refract. But the other 4 lights that I'm going to be mounting are spot. And essentially all of these LEDs with their cones will be like the top 4 right there. So 2 of them on the side, 1 on each side will be with the driving, and then the 4 in the middle will be a complete spot to just toss the light as far as possible. So I'm super stoked about this. It's gonna look really clean. Now, because I like to do things the complicated way, this isn't gonna be an easy install. Each one of these LP6 pods draws about 6.5 amps. So 6.5 times 6 comes out to, I believe, 39 amps. And with my Switch Pro, the max amp on those switches are 35. You got 4 that are 20 amp switches and 4 that are 35 amp. So obviously 6 on one switch is gonna be too much. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna split them up. So I've got the driving combos on the outside on one switch, and then the 4 spots in the middle will be on another. And those 6.5 times 4 comes out to 26 amps. So plenty of amps that will go on the 30 amp switch. And then the other 2 being 13 amps, that will go on a 20 amp switch. I'm also not going to be using the Baja Design wiring harness. I'm gonna be making my own. And the reason for that is I don't need the high-low functions for each of these pods. I'm only going to be using the high. With my Switch Pro, it has dimming functions. So I'm able to take a full output, and I believe it cuts it in half and then cuts it in half again. So rather than, you know, having the high and then switching over to low, if I only want to use a low function, I'm just going to completely scrap that low function. I'm not going to be using the low wire, and it's just going to be all high. Now, remember when I told you this is going to be complicated? On top of creating my own wiring harness, I'm also going to be needing to make modifications to their brackets. Because this is going to be mounted to my Prinsu, the Prinsu will be sitting at about a 45-degree angle, and their brackets are only created for vertical, up and down, or hanging below. And these 2 slots give you that play right here. But like I said, I'm gonna be mounted at a 45. So if I use these 2 slots, my LP6 will actually be pointed down rather than out. So I do wish that Baja Design created a little bit longer of a groove for those of us that won't be mounting them straight up and down, whether it be hanging or mounted, you know, sitting on a bar. Ours are gonna be mounted this way. So I need to Dremel out or drill out some more to this slot so that I can get my bolt here and another bolt about right there so that I can have the pod facing out. Told you guys this is gonna be complicated, but I think I can do it. And if not, you guys get to watch me screw up a probably fairly expensive bracket. I hope that they can sell just the brackets if I screw this up. because I don't want to be buying a whole new LP6 just for the bracket. All right, guys, so I'm gonna be fully transparent with you. I have never drilled into metal before, at least not this thickness of steel. You know, I've used my drill press for wood. I think I've used it even for sheet metal. But for what I'm gonna be doing, kind of new to this. I watched a couple YouTube videos because just like you watching this video, I learn off of YouTube, I learn off of, you know, just research. And I found that in order to drill into this type of metal, not only do you need some special blades, you can't be using, you know, wood drilling bits or even concrete, you need some better bits for steel, but you also need some cutting fluid. And this essentially just kind of prevents overheating. It kind of helps keep things cool. So if you guys are gonna be doing this, pick up some cutting fluid, get yourself some gloves, because I've seen that when drilling into this, not only do you get those little corkscrew drill, you know, metal pieces, but you get a lot of flaking, and that can apparently splinter into your skin and be really bad. So I'm gonna be using some gloves, obviously the eye protection. Kind of sucks because all I need is just another fraction of an inch on each side. Baja, I really wish it was just a little bit longer for those of us that aren't mounting straight up and down. You know, if you had it for a 45, there's so much space, but I get it. Okay, all right guys, so I got my bracket in place and I feel like right there is a pretty good spot. So I'm gonna go ahead and clamp her down. Now we need our cutting fluid and our gloves and our safety glasses. We are going to add just a fraction of some oil right there, and that should be good. So here we go. I'm not sure quite how this works. I think you kind of need to add some, it starts to kind of smoke a little bit, add a little bit more. Okay, so let's take a look at that. So, not horrible, not the best, but you know, I'm gonna take the Dremel and kind of clean up these rough edges. I got a diamond bit, so I'll just kind of clean up right in here. I'm not sure if I need cutting oil for this, but figure might as well. So yeah, let's take the Dremel and kind of clean this up a little bit. So yeah, definitely be careful because these things are small. Just kind of by cleaning up around here, I've gotten a couple little flakes and they hurt. So just be careful. I think I might keep the gloves on this entire time. It's kind of hard to do because they're just so thick, but yeah. So let's drill out the next hole. All right, so now that we have all of the brackets drilled out and kind of the slots extended, let's go ahead and take off the Prinsu, and we'll slide the carriage bolts into the little slot right here and start getting it all mounted together. I went to Lowe's and bought a bunch of 1/4 inch carriage bolts, and each bracket requires three slots right there, 3 holes. So I'm basically gonna have 1, 2, 3, and then I'll put my lock nut on top, and we'll be good to go. All right, so that is all of them put together on the Prinsu rack. Obviously I need to mount them, you know, tighten them down and everything, but for now, I'm gonna leave them a little loose and kind of see how they will look up on the rack. So let's go ahead and put this back up on the roof rack. Alrighty guys, so there we go. We got the Baja Design LP6 light bar mounted to the Prinsu rack, and I think it looks really good. It's sitting a little higher than I was hoping. I was hoping it would kind of tuck down, so it's kind of closer to the windshield. I might end up taking the Prinsu wind deflector off and lowering it down. I've got a bar right here that I can, you know, put it on, but that means I have to take this guy off. And I don't know, I just really like the look of the Prinsu, so we'll see. But now it gets to the wiring, and that's gonna be a fun part. That's gonna be a little tricky because I'm not gonna be using the Baja Designs wiring harness. It's a solid harness, it's a great harness, but it's a little pricey. It's about $100 per harness, and each harness only wires 2 pods. So I'm looking at about 300 bucks worth of harnesses. And on top of that, even though it is a great harness, I wouldn't be using it to its full potential. With each of these pods, they have a high beam, low beam, and backlit function. And with the wiring harness, I'd be able to use that. But because I'm gonna be wiring it to my Switch Pro, I don't need the low beam function. I can essentially wire all these to the high beam and just dim it using the Switch Pro. On top of that, because it's going to the Switch Pro, I'd have to have a separate switch for the low beam function. So a switch for the high beam, a switch for the low beam. I don't need that. I'm just gonna do the high beam function. So 300 bucks for harnesses just to have a high beam, not really worth it. Especially since I got a bunch of 10 gauge wiring harness that was like 20 bucks, 30 bucks on Amazon. Lots of really good reviews. But essentially, the 10 gauge is able to power 4 of these guys. The max current that the max amperage that the 10 gauge is allowed is 30 amps. And between 4 of these, that comes out to, well, 6.5 times 4 is 26. So well within the range. So I'm gonna have the middle 4 on one harness, and then the outsides 2, I'll put on their separate harness. And then on top of that, I'll go ahead and I got some spare, 14 gauge or 12 gauge wiring that I'll use for the backlit. And I believe the backlit is like 0.5 amps. So I'm not even worried about that. But all of that will be wired to the parking, the DRL. And when I, hit the switch on my little, steering wheel, I'll have backlit lighting up there. And then, with the Switch Pro, hit the switch and high beams come on, hit it again, it'll dim it, hit it again, dim it, and I think it'll look perfect. So let's get into the wiring part of it. All right, so the next step is to wire this beast. Now, if you get the Baja Designs, each pod is gonna come with their own connector, a little bag full of goodies. And in that bag is gonna come with the connector, a little orange tab that will go in to the front and kind of keep all of the pins connected, you know, centered and everything. It will come with the pin that will go over your wiring and of course your connector. Now, with the connector, you've got the front that will go into the Baja Design pod, but the back actually has a little rubber gasket. And just take a little knife or flathead screwdriver and it just pops out nice and easy. And you've got your two pieces. And what you're gonna do is you're going to take your wire, you're gonna shove it through the weather seal part of the gasket, strip it off. You're going to take your pin, add it to the bad boy, the wire right here. Obviously crimp it down, all that good stuff. And then you're gonna shove it into the back of your connector. So we're gonna be doing that with our white wire, which I believe is 12 gauge, 16 gauge. We got 16 gauge of wire right here, and this is gonna be what's used for our backlight. Then we have 10 gauge right here, and this is what's going to be wiring our pods. Now, like I said, we're gonna be taking the 10, and that's gonna be going for these 4 pods in the center. That's gonna all be on one harness. So I'm essentially gonna have a lot of wire, and I'm gonna run it up the side of the truck, up the windshield, across the light bar, and I'm gonna come all the way over to this pod. From here, it's gonna go straight into my LP6. These 3 right here are gonna get daisy chained into that. So I'm gonna strip a little bit of plastic off of each little spot. I'm going to make the harness and everything and connect it straight to that wire. So all 4 of these will be on one. Then I'm gonna also do the same with the white. Run it up, measure it out, run it across, plug it into here, daisy chain into each one of these. We're gonna add some heat shrink, we're gonna add some wire loom, keep it all nice and protected, all organized and clean. And then we're gonna do the same for these pods. We're gonna do the opposite, where we're gonna actually run it up this side of the pillar to kind of just keep it a little bit so we're not having all the, you know, just a huge clump going down one side. We're gonna kind of split it up a little bit. So I'm gonna run it from the battery up the driver's side, across, plugged into this guy. So this one will be straight into here, and this one will be tapped in around where the corner is. Both the 10 gauge for the high beam, and then the white 16 gauge will be for the backlit. And like I said, we're not using low beam functions, so we only need to worry about 3 pins. The positive, negative, and the backlit. And all of that is in the instructions. It tells you all of the stuff. So looking at the LP6 racer, pin 4 is the high beam, pin 1 is low beam, so we're gonna ignore pin 1. You've got pin 2, which is the ground, and then pin 3, which is the amber backlit. So 3 of these pins are gonna be used, and we're gonna make a nice little harness out of it. All right, guys, so a quick little update. While we were messing with this, we got the backlit light. That's all good to go. Pins on it, everything's good to go. However, with our 10 gauge wire, I didn't put this into consideration, but the copper wire is just way too, we got it to fit through the little gasket, but as far as it getting onto the pins, that's not gonna happen. So what we're actually gonna do is I have a bunch of 14 gauge. And so we're gonna kind of modify it a little bit, but 14 gauge fits perfectly into this. And that's actually what Baja recommends, is 14. So we're gonna have 14 coming from each light, and that will connect to our 10 gauge wire. So 14, 14, 14, 14, all spliced into a 10 gauge. And theoretically that should all still be fine, because like I said, the 10 gauge is able to handle 30 amps, and we only have 26 amps. So yeah, switching it up, gonna be using 14 gauge. All right, so we have our white pinned, shove through the number 3 spot in our gasket. Let's go ahead and do the same with the red and black, the black being ground, red being the high beam. So we are going to shove that right on through, and it's easier when you shove it before stripping it. And then same thing with the black. We'll go ahead and shove that in. So I'm gonna pull just a little bit of extra through. We will go ahead and strip off our ends and add our connectors. Let's go and do that right now. Okay, now grabbing our pins. So taking our connector, making sure we have black in the number 2 spot. That's the ground, so we'll feed you right there. And then white in number 3 and red in number 4. Beautiful. Let's go ahead and feed it into their slots. We got our orange little splitter, and that will just slide right on in there, making sure, there we go, beautiful. And this will just slide back on over to create the weatherproof seal, to shove it in there. So now we have it plugged in here. This is gonna run all the way along the bracket or the frame into our next one at the very end, the last pod. We'll splice into that bad boy, and then we'll have it go into our 10 gauge, and the 10 gauge will continue on down the A-pillar across the the engine bay and into our Switch Pro. So let's go ahead and keep moving on.
After building out the 2 connectors and wiring them to our long 10 gauge wire, it was time to solder them together. I coated the copper with some flux and then began soldering the wires together. If you're new to soldering, this process can be more difficult than just twisting the 2 ends together and adding some shrink wrap to protect the copper, but it is definitely worth it in the long run. All you need to do is rub a decent amount of flux on the copper. Then, with your soldering tool at a very high temperature, you melt the solder across the different strands of copper, getting as much of the solder into the grooves as possible. If a good bond has been created, the wires will stay connected. This process does take a lot longer, but it is 100% worth it in the end. One wire harness down, 1 to go. The second harness was a lot more difficult to make because of the amount of wires being spliced and soldered together. After connecting the 4 14-gauge wires to the 10-gauge wire harness, I did the same with the white wires. Then, I finished the harness with some heat shrink and some electrical tape.
So, we've got the harnesses built. Now it's just doing the final touch-ups, getting the heat shrink all melted. We've got it on here. Now I'm gonna just go through each of the connectors and make sure that this is nice and covered. I mean, it already has the seal right there on the gasket, so it should be pretty good with the watertight, but you know, just another little precaution. That is that end. Now that we've got this guy, that will just, oh man, perfect. Yes, that looks good. Alrighty guys, so now we have the LP6 bar, we've got our harness, everything is good to go. Let's start wiring it all together. The two outside lights are going to be the longer harness. So I'm gonna have it start from this end and work its way down. So I'm gonna go ahead and plug into U. Plug this guy in, good. And let's take our other harness that will get fed down this pillar. You guys, this looks so clean. I'm really happy with how this turned out. Beautiful. Go ahead and pop the hood. Okay, so what's nice about having the Switch Pro is I don't need to worry about relays and fuses and all of that. I literally just need to wire the hot and the negative, the positive and negative, to my Switch Pro. Okay, so now that we've got these ones in, let's go ahead and feed our other wire in. Do the same for the opposite. Beautiful. So let's go ahead and put this one on channel 6. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We feed this right in to there. We feed this right into there. And then I want this one to be right next to it. Take it back. So this isn't right next to it because it's channel 4. So I'm going to come over to these guys. Channel 4. And then the last one is the 2 white wires, which is the backlit function. And this is just gonna be, I'm just gonna wire it to one of the empty switches.
So I know I said that I'd be wiring the wires for the backlight function to the DRLs, which I still plan on doing. But for right now, I went ahead and wired it to an empty switch just to see how they looked.
Alrighty guys, so that is the setup, all screwed down. Moment of truth. Let's go ahead and take everything out, close the hood, and see how it looks. And start off with the side lights. Let's try out the middle lights. Woo! That is bright. Alrighty guys, so we are outside the taco. I've got the LP6 light bar mounted to the top. We're gonna do some tests real quick. So this is just the headlights. We're gonna now hit the high beams. So nice coverage on the trees over there, definitely helps. Now let's go ahead and hit the outside LP6s. Whoo! Now let's hit the ones in the middle. Wow. That is bright. Look at that, guys. Now we're gonna go ahead and turn off the outside. So that's just the spot. Look at that, guys. This is like, it's daytime right now. Go ahead and kill those 4 in the middle. Look at that. That is bright. Now look at the backlit. Look at how clean this looks up here. A little bit of spill on the hood, but honestly, it's not that bad. But I'll show you guys from the hood. So this is what it's like with just the headlights. And you can kind of see a little bit of the backlight spilling on it. Turning off the backlit. So now this is with the LP6 light bar. We're gonna go ahead and turn that on. A little bit of spill on the hood, but honestly, it's not as reflecting and blinding as I thought it was gonna be. That's really not that bad. That's the center, and this is the outside too. Honestly, the outside tube provides so much light. This just like fills it in.
there's our ditch lights. Ditch lights mixed in with our side 2 LP6s mixed in with the 4 in the middle.
The last step of this installation is adding the wire hider to help organize and hide the wire looms running down the sides of the window. You can buy these wire hiders from Amazon, or Baja Designs has a 3-foot wire kit and a 9-foot wire kit available. Before adding the adhesive to the back of the wire hider, make sure your windshield is clean. I do not recommend using Windex to clean your window, as Windex can actually weaken the 3M adhesive. Instead, an alcohol swab or rubbing alcohol is a better option, or just use good old soap and water. After making sure the window is nice and clean, peel back the covers over the adhesive and firmly press the wire hider down onto the windshield. Repeat the same steps on the other side and you're good to go.
Alrighty guys, there you go. The LP6 light bar, 6 Baja Design LP6s mounted up on top of my Prinsu roof rack, over 51,000 lumens worth of light. I mean, you saw earlier in the video, we went to that empty road, just the outside 2 pods, super bright, but once we hit those 4 in the middle, it just punched right through the night. I'm loving it. I think it's gonna be perfect for these off-road trips that we got coming up. We're going to Sedona later this week, so expect some cool video from that. But yeah, awesome, awesome, awesome. Super stoked to put this to work. We got our universal wire hider running down both sides of the A-pillars to hide the harnesses, keep it nice and clean looking, all wired to my Switch Pro. I mean, that's the way to go, guys. If you are wiring a bunch of lights together, I think the Switch Pro is the best option because you don't need to worry about the fuses, you don't need to worry about the relays. Just hook it up to the Switch Pro and you're good to go. So that wraps up this video, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned some new stuff. If you liked the video, please do me a huge favor, smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys on the horizon. Peace.